He remembered the sound of his own neck breaking. That isn't a metaphor. It isn't a figure of speech or a bad dream that fades when the coffee kicks in. Elias didn't just think he died, he felt it. He felt the cold, hard resistance of the steering wheel as it collapsed into his chest cavity. He felt the windshield, safety glass designed to shatter into pebbles, turning into 1,000 glittering diamonds that bit into his face and arms. He heard the sickening crunch of metal folding like wet cardboard, a sound so loud it didn't register as noise but as pressure. A physical blow to the eardrums. And then he felt the darkness. It wasn't the darkness of a room when you turn off the lights. It wasn't the blackness of sleep. It was a heavy, suffocating void, a total deletion of sensory input. No pain, no fear, no life flashing before his eyes. Just a sudden, violent switch to off. It was the feeling of being unplugged from the universe. For a singular, terrifying moment, Elias Thorne was simply gone. Beep, beep, beep. The sound cut through the void like a serrated knife. Elias gasped. A desperate, ragged intake of breath that burned his lungs like a drowning man breaking the surface of the ocean. He shot up in bed, his hands clawing at his chest, his eyes wide and unseeing. He was screaming inside, but no sound came out. He patted his ribs. He expected to feel jagged bone, wet blood, the ruin of his own body. Instead, he felt cotton. Soft, high-thread count cotton. He looked down. His hands were shaking violently, trembling with such force that they blurred in his vision. But they were clean. No glass shards, no oil, no blood. He looked up. The room was bathed in the soft amber glow of a sunrise. Dust motes danced in the light, peaceful and slow. The digital clock on the nightstand flipped from 6:59 to 7. Beep, beep, beep. Beside him, a mound of blankets shifted. A hand emerged, fumbling blindly for the clock. "Turn it off, Elle," a muffled voice groaned from under the pillow. "It's Saturday. Why is the alarm even on?" Sarah, his wife, alive, warm, annoyed that he woke her up. Elias slammed his hand down on the snooze button. The silence that followed was deafening. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears, a whooshing sound that synced with the frantic hammer of his heart. He swung his legs out of bed. His feet touched the hardwood floor. It was cold, real. I had a nightmare," he whispered, his voice cracking. Sarah murmured, drifting back to sleep. "Tell me later. Coffee first." Elias stood up. His legs felt like jelly, barely holding his weight. He walked to the ensuite bathroom, gripping the doorframe for support. He needed to see himself. He needed to prove he was still here. He gripped the porcelain sink and leaned into the mirror. He stared at his own reflection. The eyes staring back were bloodshot, the pupils dilated with residual terror. But there were no cuts, no bruises. He was whole. He splashed cold water on his face, letting the freezing liquid shock his system. He grabbed a towel and dried off, burying his face in the fabric, inhaling the scent of lavender detergent. It was just a dream, he told himself. A vivid, lucid, terrifying dream caused by stress. That's all. He lowered the towel and looked back at the mirror. And that's when the ice water in his veins turned to absolute zero. In the reflection, behind him, was the shower. The shower curtain was blue, a distinct navy blue with a geometric white pattern. Elias froze. He didn't turn around. He just stared at the reflection, his breath hitching in his throat. He and Sarah had moved into this house 5 years ago. They had decorated the bathroom together. He remembered the arguments at the store. Sarah wanted floral. Elias wanted plain. They compromised. They bought a green shower curtain, a sage green textured fabric. They had never owned a blue curtain, not once. Elias slowly turned around. He reached out a trembling hand and touched the blue fabric. It was real. It was dry. It was there. He looked back at the clock in the bedroom. He looked at the date on his phone sitting on the counter. Yesterday was Saturday, October 14th. Today is Saturday, October 14th. He hadn't just woken up from a nightmare. He hadn't just survived a crash. Elias Thorne had died on that highway. He knew it. His body knew it. But his consciousness, it had refused to leave. It had jumped. It had found the nearest available vessel, a version of himself in a timeline almost identical to his own. Almost. Because in this timeline, he hadn't driven the car. In this timeline, he was safe in bed. And in this timeline, the shower curtain was blue. We all have those stories, don't we? The near misses. Maybe you were walking down the street, staring at your phone, and you stopped for no reason. Just a split second before a flower pot fell from a third-story window and smashed exactly where you would have been standing. Maybe you lost control of your car on an icy road. You spun out, watching the guardrail rushing toward you, closing your eyes, waiting for the impact. But the car just stopped, inches from the metal. You laughed it off. You sat there, heart pounding, and said, "Wow, someone was watching over me today." You tell the story at parties. You call it a miracle. You call it luck. But what if it wasn't luck? What if you didn't stop? What if, in one version of reality, that flower pot did hit you? What if the car did go through the guardrail? What if the only reason you are here, listening to my voice right now, is because your mind simply deleted the timeline where you died? Let's rewind the clock. Before the blue shower curtain, before the crash, let me introduce you to the man who lived twice. Elias Thorne was not a man who believed in magic. He didn't read horoscopes. He didn't believe in ghosts. He was a data actuary for a major insurance firm in downtown Chicago. Do you know what an actuary does? They calculate the price of a human life. They look at spreadsheets and determine the statistical probability of you dying in a car crash, or from heart disease or a house fire, and they set your insurance premiums based on that risk. Elias's world was built on binary code, zeros and ones, true or false, dead or alive. There was no gray area in Elias's life. He was a creature of habit. He drank his coffee black. He took the 8:15 train. He wore gray suits. He loved his wife, Sarah, with a steady, quiet kind of love that wasn't flashy, but was built to last. But even steady structures have cracks. That Saturday, the first Saturday, had been rough. The kind of day where the air feels heavy in the house. The argument wasn't about anything important. It was about money, or plans for the holidays, or maybe just the accumulated stress of a long work week. Voices were raised. Sarah said things she didn't mean. Elias said things he couldn't take back. "I just need some air," Elias had shouted. He grabbed his keys off the kitchen counter, the granite counter, remember that details matter here, and stormed out into the night. It was raining in Chicago, a cold, miserable October rain that turned the streets into mirrors. The kind of rain that makes the streetlights smear across your windshield, blinding you with streaks of yellow and red. Elias got into his sedan. He was angry. He was distracted. He wasn't thinking about the friction coefficient of wet asphalt. He wasn't thinking about probability. He was just a man who wanted to drive fast to outrun his own guilt. He merged onto I-95. The traffic was light, but the visibility was poor. He was fumbling with the radio dial, trying to find something, anything, to drown out the silence in his head. He looked down for 1 second, one single second. That is the margin of error for a human life. 1 second. But before we get to the impact, before we watch the metal bend and the glass break, I need to ask you something. And I need you to stop what you are doing and really think about this. Do you believe you have ever cheated death in a way that just didn't make sense? I'm talking about a moment where the physics didn't add up. A fall that should have broken your neck but didn't even leave a bruise. A sickness that the doctor said was fatal, that vanished overnight. Answer yes or no in the comments right now. I'm serious. Pause the video. Go down to the comment section, because if you answer yes, you might not be the same person who started watching this video. You might be a survivor of a timeline that no longer exists. Are you back? Good. Because Elias Thorne didn't believe in parallel universes either. He didn't believe in the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He just wanted to go for a drive. But as he looked up from the radio, he saw the jackknifed truck blocking the highway. He saw the wall of steel, and in that fraction of a second, Elias Thorne calculated the risk. The actuary in his brain ran the numbers instantly. Speed, 65 miles per hour. Distance, 50 feet. Road conditions, slick. Outcome, 0% chance of survival. Elias braced for impact. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to become the most important test subject in the history of the universe. Subscribe to the channel if you want to explore the unknown, because we are about to open a door that can never be closed again. To understand the nightmare, we have to go back to the moment the dream ended. Elias was on I-95. The clock on the dashboard read 11:42 p.m. The cabin of the car was a sealed capsule of artificial warmth. Outside, the world was a blur of hostile elements: wind, rain, darkness. Inside, it was just the hum of the heater and the rhythmic, hypnotic thump-thump of the windshield wipers. Thump-thump, thump-thump. It's a sound we all know. It's the heartbeat of a late-night drive. But for Elias, in these final moments, it was a countdown. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't tired. He was angry. The argument with Sarah was replaying in his mind on a loop. He could still hear the pitch of her voice, the way it cracked when she told him he was emotionally absent. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, the leather creaking under the pressure of his frustration. He wanted to change the song. That was the catalyst. A simple, mundane desire to change the acoustic environment. He reached for the center console. His fingers brushed the dial. His eyes flicked down. 1 second. 1 single second. When Elias looked up, the world had been replaced by a wall of corrugated steel. A tanker truck had jackknifed across 3 lanes. It sat there like a monolith, wet and glistening under the streetlights. There was no time to think, stop. There was only the biological reflex, the lizard brain taking over. Elias slammed his foot onto the brake pedal. He pushed it all the way to the floorboards. Physics is not a negotiation. It is a dictator. The tires lost their grip on the oily road. The car didn't slow down. It turned into a sled. Elias felt the sickening lurch of hydroplaning, that total disconnection from the earth, where you are no longer a driver but a passenger in a metal coffin. He saw the undercarriage of the truck. He saw the rivets on the metal. He saw the mud flaps swaying gently in the wind. He didn't scream. He didn't have enough air. He just inhaled. A sharp, freezing intake of breath. The impact was catastrophic. The front of the sedan folded. The engine block, a massive piece of solid iron, was shoved backward, smashing through the firewall and into the cabin. The airbag deployed, but it was too late. Elias felt the steering column crush his sternum. He felt his ribs snap one by one like dry twigs. The windshield imploded, sending a blizzard of safety glass into his face. He felt pain, blinding, white-hot, searing pain for exactly 0.4 seconds. And then, nothing. This is the part that science struggles to explain. Elias died. His heart stopped. His brain activity ceased. The electrical signals that made him Elias, his memories of Sarah, his fear of spiders, his love for black coffee, were extinguished. The biology failed. The machine broke. In this universe, the police arrived 20 minutes later. They set up flares. They used the jaws of life to pry the twisted metal apart. They put Elias in a black body bag. A police officer knocked on Sarah's door at 2 a.m., holding his hat in his hands, looking at the floor because he couldn't bear to see a woman's life end in her eyes. That is what happened in Timeline A. But Elias wasn't in Timeline A anymore. The transition wasn't a tunnel of light. There were no angels. There was no life review. It was instantaneous. One moment, metal was crushing his chest. The next moment, he was inhaling the smell of lavender detergent. Elias gasped. He sat up in bed, his chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. His brain was trying to reconcile two impossible realities. One, I am dead, I am crushed, I am gone. Two, I am here, I am warm, the sun is shining. He touched his face. He expected blood. He felt stubble. He touched his ribs. He expected shattered bone. He felt a heartbeat. A fast, terrified heartbeat, but a strong one. It was a dream, he whispered. The words felt like sand in his mouth. Just a dream. But deep down, in the lizard brain that had tried to slam on the brakes, he knew. The sensory memory of the death was too real. The smell of the burnt rubber, the taste of copper blood in his mouth. You can't dream pain that vivid. You can't dream the feeling of your own soul being ripped out of your body. Elias got out of bed. His legs shook so hard he had to grab the dresser. He looked at the date. Saturday. Again. He had looped back, or so he thought. He walked to the window and looked out. The car was in the driveway, pristine, not a scratch on it. He laughed, a manic, broken laugh. I'm alive. Oh my God, I'm alive. He thought he had been given a second chance. He thought he had cheated the Reaper. He didn't realize yet that there is no such thing as a free lunch in quantum physics. He walked into the bathroom to wash the cold sweat off his face. He reached for the towel, and then he saw it, behind him. The reflection, the blue shower curtain. Elias froze. The relief evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He knew every inch of his house. He knew that curtain was green. He wasn't in the past. He wasn't in a dream. He was somewhere else. He had survived the crash, yes, but the cost of admission was his reality. Elias Thorne was now a refugee in a universe that was 99.9% identical to his own. It was that 0.1% that was about to drive him insane. The middle, escalation. The human mind is designed to reject the impossible. We rationalize. We compartmentalize. Elias tried to ignore the blue curtain. Maybe Sarah bought a new one and I forgot, he told himself. Maybe I'm colorblind. Maybe the lighting is weird. But once you start pulling at the loose thread of reality, the whole sweater starts to unravel. It wasn't just the bathroom. He went to the kitchen to make coffee. He needed caffeine to stop his hands from shaking. He reached for his trusty stainless steel coffee maker, the one he had polished every Sunday for 3 years, the one he bought with his first Christmas bonus. It was red. Not just red, a vibrant, aggressive cherry red. He stood there for 10 minutes just staring at it. He asked Sarah when she came downstairs, "Honey, when did we get this?" She looked at him confused, pouring herself a cup. "The coffee maker? We got it for our wedding, Elle, from your Aunt Martha. Why?" It was silver yesterday," Elias stammered. Sarah laughed, a light, dismissive laugh. "You're working too hard. It's always been red, just like the toaster." Elias looked at the toaster. It was red, too. He felt the floor tilt. He felt a wave of nausea. In his memory, in his real memory, that toaster was black. Monday came. Elias hoped that routine would ground him. He went to work. He walked into the lobby of the insurance firm. He swiped his ID badge at the turnstile. Beep. Access denied. He tried again. Beep. Access denied. The security guard looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" Elias smiled nervously. "Hey, Bob. My card's acting up again." The guard frowned. He stood up, his hand resting near his belt. "Sir, I don't know who Bob is. My name is Roger, and I need to see some ID." Elias looked at the man. He had never seen this face in his life. He had spent 5 years talking sports with Bob every morning. Bob had a mustache. Roger was clean-shaven. Elias backed away. I work here." He eventually got in, but the nightmare deepened. He went to his cubicle. It was occupied by a stranger. He found his boss. "Where is my desk?" His boss looked at him with pity. "Elias, are you okay? You moved to the 4th floor 6 months ago, after the merger." "What merger?" Elias whispered. "The merger with Omnicorp," the boss said slowly, as if talking to a child. "Elias, go home. Take the day off." Elias went home. But it wasn't home anymore. It was a museum of a life he didn't recognize. The rugs were wrong. The books on the shelf were by authors he didn't read. And Sarah, this was the hardest part. The woman sleeping in his bed looked like Sarah. She sounded like Sarah. But she wasn't his Sarah. His Sarah had a small scar on her chin from a childhood fall. This Sarah's skin was flawless. His Sarah hated spicy food. This Sarah put hot sauce on her eggs. He was sleeping next to a stranger, a doppelganger. He felt a profound, aching loneliness that is impossible to describe. He was the only person in the world who remembered the real world. He stopped sleeping. He spent his nights on the internet, diving down the deepest rabbit holes he could find. He read about the Mandela effect, people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, even though he lived until 2013. People remembering Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstain. Most people laughed at this. They called it bad memory. But Elias found the physics. He discovered the work of Hugh Everett, the many worlds interpretation. The theory implies that for every possible outcome of a quantum event, the universe splits. A decision is made, split. An atom decays, split. A car crashes, split. And then he found it. The concept that would explain his survival and destroy his sanity, quantum immortality. The logic is simple and terrifying. You are a conscious observer. You can only experience being alive. You cannot experience being dead. Therefore, from your own subjective perspective, you will never die. If you play Russian roulette, in 5 out of 6 universes, you die. Your brain splatters on the wall. Your family cries. But in the 6th universe, click. You live. And because you can't be aware of the universes where you died, your consciousness flows like water into the only vessel that remains, the survivor. Elias realized the truth. On that rainy highway, the probability of him dying was 99.9999%. To survive, his consciousness had to jump to an incredibly unlikely branch of reality. A branch so far removed from his own that things were different here. The shower curtain, the coffee maker, the guard named Roger. These were the butterfly effects of a timeline where he didn't die. He wasn't crazy. He was a quantum castaway. He was immortal. But immortality isn't a gift. He looked at Sarah, this stranger Sarah, sleeping peacefully. If he was immortal, it meant he would watch her die. He would watch everyone die. He would outlive the sun. He would outlive the earth. He would be trapped in a dying consciousness forever, shifting from one unlikely survival to the next, eternally alone. The dread set in, a cold, heavy weight in his stomach. He had to know for sure. He couldn't live with the doubt. The theory was just a theory until it was tested. And Elias was an actuary. He needed data. He needed to run the experiment again. 6 months. That is how long Elias Thorne lived in the house with the blue shower curtain and the red coffee maker. 6 months of sleeping next to a woman who looked like his wife, smelled like his wife, but who, in 1,000 subtle, microscopic ways, was a total stranger. He tried to adapt. He really did. He tried to be the husband this version of Sarah expected. But every time she laughed at a joke he didn't make, or reminisced about a vacation to Cabo that he never took, the splinter in his mind dug deeper. He felt like an imposter, a skinwalker wearing the life of a man who was already dead in another timeline. The isolation was absolute. You can't tell a psychiatrist that you are from a parallel universe where the toaster is black. They give you pills for that. They lock you up. So Elias stayed silent. He went to his job on the 4th floor, he crunched the numbers, and he calculated the odds. He became obsessed with the probability of survival. He built models. He ran simulations. And the conclusion was always the same. If the many worlds interpretation is true, then suicide is impossible from the first-person perspective. You can kill the body, you can destroy the brain, but the consciousness, the I that is perceiving this moment, will simply slide like water finding the path of least resistance into the nearest branch of reality where the brain is still intact. But Elias was a man of science. A hypothesis is worthless without a test. It was a Tuesday night when he decided to end it, or rather to prove that it couldn't be ended. He wrote a letter to Sarah, not the Sarah in the other room, but his Sarah, the one who was probably visiting his grave in Universe A. He wrote, "I'm coming to find you." He burned the letter in the sink. He grabbed his keys. He walked out to the car. The air was thick and humid, the sky a bruised purple that looked unnatural, though the weatherman said it was just a storm front. Elias didn't care about the weather. He cared about velocity. He drove to the same stretch of I-95. He needed to replicate the conditions. He needed the variables to be absolute. He found the overpass. Concrete pillars, 3 feet thick, reinforced with rebar. An immovable object. Elias merged onto the highway. He turned off the radio. He didn't want a soundtrack. He wanted the purity of the machine. He pressed the accelerator. 70 miles per hour. The engine hummed. 80. The wind began to whistle through the door seals. 90. The steering wheel began to vibrate. A violent shaking that traveled up his arms and into his teeth. 100. The world outside blurred into streaks of neon and black. The concrete pillar loomed ahead, illuminated by his high beams. It was gray, scarred, and waiting. Elias started crying. He wasn't crying because he wanted to die. He was crying because he was terrified that he wouldn't. "If I'm crazy," he screamed over the roar of the engine, his voice tearing at his throat, "then let this be dark. Let it be the end. Please, God, let it be the end." He lined up the hood ornament with the center of the pillar. 110 miles per hour. Distance, 200 feet. Probability of survival, 0.00001%. He didn't close his eyes this time. He kept them wide open. He wanted to see the moment the universe broke. He saw the texture of the concrete. He saw the graffiti sprayed near the base. He saw the inevitable. He yanked the wheel. Crash! The sound was apocalyptic. The front of the car disintegrated. The engine block became a projectile. The force was enough to liquefy organs. The darkness came instantly, a sledgehammer to the consciousness. Snap. Sunlight. Blinding, white, sterile sunlight. Elias gasped, a ragged, choking sound. He flailed his arms, expecting to hit the airbag, expecting to feel the crushed metal. His hand hit plastic. He blinked, his vision swimming in spots of color. He wasn't in a car. He wasn't on the highway. He was standing on a sidewalk. He was holding a paper cup of coffee. The lid had popped off, and hot liquid was soaking into his shoes. The noise of the city washed over him, horns, chatter, the rumble of a subway beneath the grate. Elias dropped the cup. He spun around, frantic. He patted his chest. A suit. He was wearing a navy blue suit. He felt his face. No blood, no pain. "No!" he moaned. "No! No! No!" He grabbed a passerby, a young man with headphones. "Where am I? What happened?" The kid pulled his headphones down, looking at Elias like he was a junkie. "You're on 5th and Grand, man. Let go of me." "The car," Elias panted. "The crash. I hit the pillar." The kid shoved him away. "Get away from me, freak." Elias stumbled back. He looked around. The buildings. They were taller. The cars looked different. sleeker, quieter. There were drones buzzing overhead, weaving between the traffic lights, delivering packages. He had never seen that before. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket. It wasn't his phone. It was a thin, transparent slab of glass. He tapped the screen. It lit up. Tuesday, October 14th, 2028. Elias stopped breathing. 2026 was the year he drove into the pillar. He had skipped 2 years. "I jumped," he whispered. "I jumped too far." He ran. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran to his apartment building. He burst into the lobby. The doorman was new. A robot? No, just a kiosk. An automated screen. He typed in his apartment number. Resident not found. He typed it again. Resident not found. He ran out, hailing a taxi. He gave the driver his parents' address in the suburbs. The ride felt like it took a century. When he got there, the house was painted yellow. It used to be white. He pounded on the door. "Mom! Dad!" The door opened. His mother stood there. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was completely gray. She was holding a cane. When she saw him, her eyes rolled back in her head, and she slumped against the door frame. "Mom!" Elias caught her. "Mom! It's me! I'm okay!" She pushed him away, screaming. It was a primal, animalistic scream of terror. "No! You're dead! You're dead!" "I'm not!" Elias cried, tears streaming down his face. "I survived! I don't know how, but I'm here! We buried you!" She shrieked, backing into the house, grabbing a vase to defend herself. "We buried you 2 years ago. You drove into the bridge. There was nothing left to bury." Elias froze. "I saw the casket go into the ground," she sobbed, collapsing onto the floor. "Get out! Demon, get out!" Elias backed away, his hands trembling. In this timeline, he had died. He had succeeded. The Elias of this world drove into the pillar and ceased to exist. But his consciousness, the observer, had nowhere to go in the 2026 timeline, so it vaulted across the probability tree. It found a reality where somehow, miraculously, he hadn't been in the car that day. Or maybe he had been in a coma for 2 years. Or maybe he had simply appeared. He looked at the sky. It was that bruised purple color again. The probability of appearing out of thin air or surviving a 100-feet crash is so infinitesimally small that the universe he had to land in was a broken one, a highly improbable one. He was alive, but he was a ghost in a world that had already mourned him. The resolution and scientific twist. Elias eventually stopped running. There was nowhere to run to. He sat on a park bench. He was homeless now. He had no ID that worked in this year, no money that was valid, no family that wouldn't call the police on sight. He was the anomaly, the glitch. He realized the trap he was in. The true horror of quantum immortality isn't that you live forever as a superhero. It's that you live forever as a survivor of tragedies that should have killed you. Every time you die in a main timeline, your consciousness is forced into a branch timeline where you survived. But think about the odds. To survive a car crash at 60 mph? Plausible. To survive a car crash at 100 mph? Unlikely. To survive a gunshot to the head? 1 in a billion? To survive old age? 1 in a trillion. As Elias sat on that bench, watching the purple sky darken, he understood his future. He would get older. His body would fail. He would get cancer or heart disease or dementia. And in 99% of the universes, he would die. He would find peace. But he, the conscious entity, would be forced into the 1% where the cancer goes into remission spontaneously, where the heart attack is minor, where the dementia is just confusion. He would become a decrepit, ancient thing. A biological impossibility. He would watch Sarah die. He would watch his parents die. He would watch his friends die. And he would remain. Because 0 is not a number the observer can see. He tried one last time. He found a bridge. A high bridge over the river. He climbed the railing. The wind whipped his suit jacket. "Please," he begged the sky, "just let it go to black." He leaned forward. Gravity took him. He fell. The water rushed up to meet him. He hit the surface. Snap! He was sitting on the riverbank, coughing up water. A fisherman was patting him on the back. "Lucky son of a gun," the fisherman said, shaking his head. "Fell right between the rocks. Not a scratch on you." Elias didn't move. He just stared at the mud. He couldn't die. The universe wouldn't let him. It would bend the laws of physics. It would warp reality. It would transport him to a world of purple skies and automated drones before it would let him experience non-existence. He looked up at the camera. His eyes were old, ancient. They held the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. "I'm not afraid of dying anymore," Elias whispered. The voice wasn't his own. It sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "I'm afraid that I can't." The camera pulls back, rising higher and higher. Elias is just a small dot on the riverbank. The city around him flickers. Buildings glitch in and out of existence. The sky shifts from purple to green to a void of static. He has traveled so far from the trunk of the probability tree that the branches are snapping. He is in the realm of the impossible, and he is all alone. If the many worlds theory is true, this is the fate that awaits us all. You think death is a wall, but it's not. It's a filter. All the versions of you that die, you will never be them. You will never know they existed. You will only ever be the one who survived. Think about the last time you had a near miss. That time you choked on food and coughed it up at the last second. That time you felt a pain in your chest that suddenly went away. That time you merged into traffic and didn't see the car in your blind spot until they honked. In another timeline, your family is grieving you right now. In another timeline, your funeral was yesterday. But here, in this timeline, you are watching a video on a screen. You feel safe. You feel alive. But take a look around the room. Look at the color of your walls. Look at the logo on your coffee mug. Look at the name of the author on that book on your shelf. Are you sure they are the same as they were yesterday? Are you sure you're still in the world you were born in? Or have you been jumping unknowingly from tragedy to tragedy, leaving a trail of corpses behind you in other universes, while you, the immortal observer, continue on, cursed to see the end of everything but yourself? If this story kept you up, hit the like button. It helps us find you in the next timeline. And if you want to keep exploring the unknown, click the video on your screen right now. Sleep well, and check your shower curtain.